It is the use of a vacuum and some kind of jar cup. Traditionally, they were buffalo horns, pieces of bamboo, clay pots. That creates a vacuum and pulls the skin away from the fascia away from the muscle, and allows for more blood to circulate into that tissue, right? And what we're doing there is really we're trying to reduce inflammation, but we have all these other side effects. We get fresh blood to the tissue. We're getting more oxygen, more nutrients, and even pharmaceuticals, right? We're getting, if you do
Sure.
have supplements or drugs in your bloodstream, they're going to flow to that tissue better.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by Dr. Tom Ingegno, Doctor of Acupuncture and Chinese Medicine and licensed acupuncturist, and the best-selling author of the cupping book, Unlocking the Secrets of Ancient Healing. Dr. Tom owns and operates Charm City Integrative Health, which has been called the future of medicine. His clinic provides a multidimensional approach to reducing inflammation, improving circulation, and regulating the immune system to help people thrive. Dr. Tom is spreading his message of health using modern research, traditional practices, and humor to make complex theories and treatments understandable. In today's conversation, we're talking about the ancient roots of cupping therapy, Tom's passion for empowering people with the tools to use this powerful modality at home, and how returning to a lifestyle connected to nature can bring about true wellness. Dr. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited for this conversation, and I have probably like 8,000 questions for you.
That's all right. I'll answer them all best as I can.
You're so accommodating. I would love to know, have the listeners get to know you a little bit. How did you get into what I would call kind of like ancient healing modalities, or even just like true healing modalities? But
Well,
what
yeah,
brought you here?
it's like I love telling the story because I think it helps people relate to where you're at.
Yeah.
So I was growing up thinking I was going to be a medical doctor, right? That's it, right? You want to help people, go into Western medicine, because I didn't know there was any other kind of medicine. And when I was in college, and God, this is before college, in high school, my grandfather was a pharmacist and he was counting out pills one day. And he actually was, kind of shaking his head while he was doing it old school with a it had like a spatula.
I worked
and
at a pharmacy. I remember.
And then you had the ones that you would dump back into the main bottle, and then the ones you would fill into the prescription. So he counts them out and he looks at me and he goes, God, these things cost $5 a pill. He has to take 3 of them a day for the rest of his life. The guy that happened to be doing it was like a day laborer, hops on the back of the truck at Home Depot and gets handed cash at the end of the day. And my grandfather, I'm Italian, but he always used to refer to the Latinos that came into his pharmacy as his people's people, right? Like there was this really similar way that immigrants from both places were treated. We were expected to do the manual labor and not give back talk and do all this stuff. And, he always was trying to look out for them. And he said, this is such a big chunk of this guy's budget. And he looked at me and he goes, there's got to be a better way, and I'm hoping you find it. And then, I blocked that out. He died about a year later, and I'm sitting in college one night, and that popped into my head. And at the time, I happened to be taking a Tai Chi elective, like an after school kind of like, here's a once a week class. And I was in a Chinese philosophy course, and
Ah,
it was very interesting to me because that Chinese philosophy bleeds into all different aspects of life. So it's not just, oh, this theoretical thing, right? So that in art, music, writing, even their calligraphy has these concepts of balance and, oh, this is too yin, this is too yang. And certainly that's in their martial arts too. Fast forward a couple of years to junior year, and in that winter intercession, I received a postcard in the mail from an acupuncture school, and it was about 10 minutes from my parents' house. It was
oh,
it was
wow.
and to tell you the truth, I'm going there next week, and I'm super excited. I get to see somebody that I studied with and actually stayed with in Vancouver for
Oh, cool.
2 weeks about 20 years ago, and go meet up with some of my old buddies from acupuncture school. But after that 2 weeks, I was enrolled, and I never looked back. I went to that open house and was like, this is it.
That's awesome.
And that's pretty much, fast forward 20, well, school was 3.5 years, so about 26 and a half years.
I know. I don't know how this happens.
I had hair at some point too. I don't know what happened to that.
I get it. Yeah. Well, at which, and thank goodness, because look at the contribution you're making.
Well, we're
You
trying,
know, it's
it's a big push. It's a lifestyle, you can't just do this halfway, and you have to kind of let it is it Charles Bukowski that said, like, find something you love and let it kill you, or something like that? Whatever that is, like, it's funny because East Asian medicine is all about this concept of yang shen, living life fully and robust as long as you can, right?
right. And that's the
Yeah.
whole point. I think the most brilliant thing that accidentally ever tumbled out of my mouth was that I want to live well until I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not about how old, although I didn't think I'd live to see 50. So I'm really
Wow.
grateful and blessed to be 55 and living life to its fullest. But
Yeah.
I love that you pointed out, because this is the difference in my mind. I mean, there's so many differences, but that the perspective, this old, like somehow we and we're going to talk about kind of, how old, acupuncture, cupping,
Hmm.
all of
Hmm.
this is, right? This is like a return to the roots that what humans have known works for a long time.
Yeah.
But this mentality of, the pill for the ailment, back to your grandfather, right?
Yeah.
I can keep doing what I'm doing, really living the way I'm living, and
Hmm.
somebody else is going to fix it for me. And
Yeah.
so I love that you brought that up, because even, going to your clinic and getting these amazing treatments that work, and we're going to talk about the science
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
Um, you have to be living the lifestyle, though.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
My mentor was very strict with that, let's say. He kind of, I almost said raised there, but I think that's an appropriate word. He raised me and my
Sure.
colleagues, and look, it was almost like martial arts. Like, you keep doing this until you own it. And he would always say things like, there's no advanced techniques, just basic ones practiced to perfection, which is
Oh,
like
I love that.
directly from
Yeah.
Chinese martial arts. But
Right.
these, what we do over and over again, it doesn't just become a habit, it becomes ingrained in who we are.
Sure.
And with that, that's where we start to see skill. That's where we all have our own expression. So there's an expression in China that I absolutely love, and I say it to new patients, especially if they've been to other acupuncturists: 10 acupuncturists, 10 treatments.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all trying to express this medicine in the best way we can. So the people that I've studied with for years and I came up with, they'll do a completely different treatment if you
Of
see them,
course.
but that's the beauty of
It's
the
but
medicine.
it's the art and the science,
Yeah.
right? And I'm guessing not every patient on your table gets the same treatment,
No, absolutely not. Even
right?
if they say the same things,
Right.
even something as simple as back pain, which we see all day, it's like,
Yeah.
no, yours is a little different. Okay,
Sure.
well, why did you do this instead of that? I don't know. I felt like it.
Right.
No, there's a reason.
No.
This is how you presented.
Right.
And today is different than the next time I see you.
Right. Right. No, which is getting back to this personalized
Yeah.
treatment, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I want to talk a little bit about, I want to kind of dive into the book a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Because I have learned so much about cupping from you. I
Mhm.
always thought it was an ancient Chinese medicine practice.
Yeah.
I have received it in that light from a Chinese
Mhm.
medicine practitioner who was also an MD, but
Yeah.
studied in China for years and years and years. And so I was like, wait, what? So let's talk about like what, for people out there, I'm sure I forget because I live in this bubble, right?
Yeah.
There probably are people who are like, what is cupping?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
start there and then we'll just see where we go.
So we're about I know when we're recording this will probably air at a different time, but we're about 2 weeks away from the Summer Olympics starting.
Yes.
And the biggest nod to cupping was 4 years ago with Michael Phelps. He's a
Yes.
hometown hero here in Baltimore, but
Yes.
he hopped out of the pool and he had these perfectly circular hickeys all over his body.
Yep.
And that's when it kind of really hit. Gwyneth Paltrow did something back in 2006. She showed up to like a red carpet event with a backless dress and had cupping marks. People all thought she was sick. But within that, it is the use of a vacuum and some kind of jar cup. Traditionally, they were buffalo horns, pieces of bamboo, clay pots. That creates a vacuum and pulls the skin away from the fascia away from the muscle, and allows for more blood to circulate into that tissue, right? And what we're doing there is really we're trying to reduce inflammation, but we have all these other side effects. We get fresh blood to the tissue. We're getting more oxygen, more nutrients, and even pharmaceuticals, right? We're getting, if you do have supplements or drugs in your bloodstream, they're going to flow to that tissue better. So the bruise, which really technically isn't a bruise because it's not like a blunt force trauma, it doesn't hurt.
Sure.
And those are the capillaries at the surface rupturing from the pressure.
Yeah.
The bruise isn't where the first magic happens. That happens deeper in the tissue, and studies show up to 6 inches deep. Right. So we can really get deep. Yeah.
Right. So I've heard you explain about, how we can improve lung health or, treat breathing issues. And it seems if you don't really understand what's going on, it's like, well, how does bruising my back help my lungs? But I'm thinking of now, like all of these different, we're finally starting to circle back and understand the importance of fascia release and, and getting into all these layers and like getting those adhesions to release.
Moving. Yeah. And it's always interesting to me because, acupuncture as a system as a formalized system is about 2,700 years old. We know we have texts going back. We have references going back 9,000 years to something called needle therapy. No description beyond that. So we can't really say when acupuncture started, but we know that we have records of cupping that are older than that formalized acupuncture text.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing.
I started to ask you, and from where can we trace it back to?
Not
China.
And I'll tell you how it kind of came to China and why it's kind of tied in there. We know the oldest text that we currently have, and there was probably things written down beforehand, but we lose them to time and wars and cultural shifts and all those things. But 1515 BC, we have the Ebers Papyrus, which is Egyptian. And we know that cupping was written about there, but they wrote surgical procedures down, and we still do some of the same techniques today in modern hospitals. So cupping was written about there. Persian physicians were using it. Hippocrates wrote about it, the father of modern medicine. So we have all of these kind of in that kind of Mediterranean, Northern Africa, Middle Eastern area. And I'm reading a book now on another technique from acupuncture, which is called moxibustion. And we found these scrolls, and oh my God, acupuncture evolved and it's even older, and we didn't know this and we didn't know that. So what we know is that people were traveling east, west, north, south a hell of a lot earlier than the Silk Trade route.
Right.
So we don't even know how these ideas got to China, but in about 300, 350 AD, don't quote me on that.
Right.
There was a Chinese physician that was writing about cupping, and he was saying, you know, I know this sounds so beneath all of you, right? Because we're doctors, you know, and this was done in homes. This was done and still classically is across the world, before you even went to see a professional.
Right.
Right. And he goes, this is so great. And you guys are missing this. So we shouldn't look our nose down at this. We should incorporate this. And it's been about since 300 AD that acupuncturists and Chinese medicine practitioners have been including cupping.
Which is amazing. And what I love about your book and what you're doing is, you know, it would be really difficult for me to get to your clinic on a regular basis because I live in Colorado, right? And so it's again putting the power. This whole podcast, my whole mission is about empowering people to take control of their health, right? That's why we're here having the conversation. And so I love that you're putting cupping in the hands of people, getting it back in the home. And we'll talk a little bit about different, you know, I certainly, although I could, because I live with a physician who would, you know, love the challenge of, you know, using fire.
But
and that's kind of this beautiful thing where modern technology, right, can bring this ancient art and science medicine into homes
and make it more accessible.
It's accessible. It's not dangerous. And so, you know, I love that. I think that is like the biggest gift that you're giving people. And somebody who gets to see you in person is obviously going to disagree.
Oh, we're gonna do the fire cupping there. I'm not gonna pass on an opportunity to play with fire.
I heard you say something, and so let's talk about that because fire. So the cupping and I've experienced cupping, you know, in massage or whatever, but it's very different from the ritual of cupping I received with the Chinese medicine doctor. Right? And I loved what you said, because when I work with clients, we always start with mindset, and it ties in directly with this too, because some of the most impactful things people can do is stuff that even I used to think was woo-woo, and it's the oldest science out there. Right. And so what you're doing in clinic, including, you know, incorporating the fire cupping and I've heard you talk about, you know, taking.
Wow, you have done a deeper dive on me.
using, you know, that showmanship, I think is what you called it. But you tied it, you know, you explained, right? It's not just, this isn't an ego thing for you.
No.
The placebo effect is real. And so
and why not hammer on that if that's what's going to get you that 10% extra relief? Or look, I got this special thing done. You know, my mentor used to say this. He wasn't a marketer, but he always had a busy practice, probably because he had so many devoted students going like, you know, you got to see my teacher. But you know, when we asked him, like, you know, how the hell do we get a practice started? He goes, look, you know, you guys are starting out. You don't have, you know, the best clinical skill yet, right? You develop that over time. But, you know, maybe the guy across the street from you doesn't have as nice of an office space. Maybe they're not playing good music. Maybe your table is a little bit more comfortable. You know, and all of that adds into the effect. And when we look at what we're doing with like a lot of the techniques that we offer classically, we're playing with the autonomic nervous system, right? Getting that vagus nerve to settle down. Why? Because that gets the blood vessels open. That gets better circulation. That reduces inflammation. You know, that helps repair the gut. That helps regulate brainwave activities, neurotransmitters, hormones. It hits every system. It's called the vagus nerve because it wanders everywhere.
Right.
So if we can play that up, if we can turn that up, we'll get better results without having to like do like crazy heavy lifting.
Right.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Right. Ah, I love it. I love it. And I love that I was thinking, okay, inflammation while you were talking about, because especially today, and I'm sure in every time in civilization, but in particular today, the chronic stress load.
Yeah.
Back then it was acute stressors, which we handle beautifully. Our body is like so designed for that.
Yeah.
But how we live today, I have found, and so to have that gift of like, oh, here's how you get, let's help you into the parasympathetic state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't heal if you're not in the parasympathetic state.
And
so
society is designed to keep you in that sympathetic state
yes,
now, almost,
more
right?
and more and more.
Yeah. Oh my
Yes.
God, this is something to be afraid of. And you're like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Now I'm terrified.
Right. And now we're making up stuff to be afraid of. Like we didn't have enough stuff to be afraid of already.
In the 80s and the 90s, they used to say paper tigers, right? And it was like, oh, my boss is going to kill me, right?
Yeah.
No, the boss isn't going to kill you. You might get chewed out.
Right.
But your brain is going, oh my God, I'm dying if if I don't get this assignment done or something. And now it's literally like, the 5 o'clock news will go, do you know what's killing you now?
Right.
And you're like, I don't.
Yeah. I learned before I even knew anything. I noticed in my 20s. I grew up in New Jersey, so my local news was the New York City news, right? Those were my news networks. So,
oh
some
God,
Philly,
I have flashbacks of old commercials with Jersey jingles and like, oh God, I'll do that in the car with my wife. I'm like, hey, you remember the Milford Plaza? She's like, I do. I remember the song too, and I was like, that's such a niche commercial. Anyway, I'm distracting you.
It's so true. But what I noticed was I moved in like 1989. I moved to Miami.
Yeah.
And I don't know if listeners know what was happening in Miami in 1989, but it was like living in an episode of Cops. Always. And and the reason I'm bringing it up is because you would think if the New York City news, wasn't bad enough. That was when I noticed, oh my gosh, I can't watch the news at night or I don't sleep. Was when I lived in Miami. I was like, I'll take what's going on in New York City any day.
Any day.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy. Everyone thinks it's a horror show, and you're like, no.
But it's one of like the first dot connections I made. I wasn't in the wellness space. I wasn't aware of much. But I know it was noticeable, and that was way better than news now.
Yeah. Absolutely. If it bleeds, it leads. And then, now it can't even be a little paper cut anymore. You have to lose a limb. Right. To get people's attention. So even when it's like, oh, that sucks, but it's not that big of a deal, they will turn it into like, oh, everyone's going to lose a life over here. This is horrible. Yeah. And that's unfortunate because like there's also this thing where I don't think we've ever been safer in our entire lives, right?
And like there's so much beauty and there's so much and again and then I do sometimes in that mindset of like, technology, look at us on opposite sides of the country having this beautiful conversation that people around the world are going to get to listen to and watch, right? So we forget that back to the cupping of like technology, right? Because who used to do cupping in the home? Like when
it was, I always call it grandma's medicine, right? And that's how it was introduced to me, right? It was always, and it didn't matter what culture people came from, right? Everyone, anytime I've talked about it, anytime I've taught, oh God, and slight variations on the technique. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Which is beautiful. And so, and I don't know that without technology and we'll talk a little bit about like the different kinds of cups and But I don't know that we would get, nor should we, fire cupping back into the home on a wide scale.
I know plenty of families whose grandmothers are either first generation or off the boat that are still doing it.
Sure.
I'm
but
never
that's
going to tell
different.
a grandmother not to do it.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people
Yeah.
that have never heard of cupping and they want to learn and start. Like, that's not where you should start.
Yeah, leave that to the professionals. Leave that to the people. And it's funny because I'm going to tell a story, and one of my associates is going to kill me. But there's a reason we have.
But not really.
No. No, there's a reason why we have those trash cans with a lid in our clinic now.
Yes.
The way we've laid out the room, the rubbing alcohol that we dip the torch into is right next to the garbage can. And she goes, I accidentally lit the garbage can on fire. I'm like, oh, I did that twice. We should probably get new cans.
We should maybe rethink this layout.
And it's
and you're a trained professional.
And that's the thing. I probably shouldn't admit that, right? I look like a lunatic, but
no, I actually think first of all, you're human.
Yeah.
And we knew we were going to have fun today.
Yeah.
And secondly, if it's happening with you, right? Like,
imagine what's happening in people's home.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But thanks for the tip of the garbage can with the lid. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I would say if anyone was ever going to try it, make sure there's nothing flammable around. And that includes you wouldn't even think if you're doing something on somebody's like upper back or shoulders, well, make sure their hair's out of the way, right? You shouldn't have to say that, but some of those products are pretty flammable, and hair doesn't hold up against heat.
No. And it is attached to your head, so
it is attached
let's
to
not do that. or your face, depending on who you are.
This is most likely to get food stuck in it. Fortunately, at least
it's okay. If you need a snack later, you're all set.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love it. So how was your mission to get cupping back into the household? Like, what spurred you to write the book?
So it's funny because there's so many things that are happening right now, right? We're at a time where like AI is going to just completely rechange the world. And, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? We're going to have some problems with it, but that's any new technology we have problems with. And we're also seeing this kind of return to like natural therapies, right? Half the services I offer in my clinic, I feel like if people were outside seasonally more, they wouldn't need. But we're not like that. We go car to office to, back to car, to back to home, and we're not exposed to the elements anymore, and we're not, putting our feet on the ground. And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but like there's some studies on grounding, and so
studies,
so. But it's still not mainstream, and you still kind of look like the out there person when you're doing it, and it is
standing on the ground barefoot.
I mean, how weird is that, right?
I
know. And for me, it's like, no, you don't understand. As long as we've been human beings, we've had a relationship to nature, and even before we've been human beings, right? Our brains were the same as they were, like, I don't even know how many millions of years ago, but like since we've been Homo sapiens, we've had the same brains, right? So we've had these abilities to think and problem solve and process these things. So I'm not saying every ancient technique is well-founded. I'm not saying we should start jumping on, you remember the old school sketch, Steve Martin was a barber, and on SNL, and he just said, take another pint, right? So there is some value in therapeutic bleeding, right? We see that in men with hormone replacement. We do bleeding techniques in acupuncture, and it's not taking pints and pints and just letting it. We're not old school, but there's some technique there, and there's
leeches actually are still used in medicine. Like, not everything old was not worthy, right? Like,
Walter Reed had me do a lecture and I've done 4 for them. They're
Wow.
medical hospital system, and the first one I did, they were like, "Oh, that was great. Can you come back?" And I go, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, can you come back around Halloween?" And I go, "All right, let me show these guys how weird I am." And they won't invite me back. And I said, "How about I do a bunch of gross stuff from history that has modern corollaries?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"I'm all in. Let's do that."
Oh,
I'm like,
love
"Oh
it.
shit, he called me out."
I gotta
But
bring it now.
we talked about leech therapy. We talked about eating human placenta as a precursor to stem cell replacement. We
Sure.
talked about fecal transplant because that has Chinese origin roots.
Sure.
We talked about a whole bunch of weird things that, like, hey, guess what? Maggot therapy is still being used today.
Right.
So when we have the modern evidence, when we have the modern research saying, no, guys, this is, please keep this baby and don't
Yeah.
dump all that
Don't toss it
bathwater
out.
out.
Right.
And now it's starting to see these kind of limelight things where we're like, oh, wow, this really does deserve its moment in the spotlight. It does deserve to be incorporated.
Yeah.
And when we have those techniques that now, as you were saying before, technology has made so much more accessible.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
let me
Doesn't have
write
to
the
be an either or, right?
yeah, it can be a both. Let me
Yeah.
write the book. I want
I
you to be able
love
to
it.
read that in a few hours. I'm going to
Yeah.
talk to you like it's grandma teaching you. I don't need to make this a scholastic activity where you're going to have to take notes and find reference material. And I want to show you that this is intuitive, right? So
Yeah.
where do you think they should go is a pretty good idea. Now, the book also covers like the different types of cups that are available on the market. And I mean, you can go crazy and buy the $120 electric one, or you can go on Amazon and go like, oh, here's 20 of them for like $10. So I want you to have that ability to design it the way you want. And I just want you to have the information, because that information is power. And then you're empowered to live a better, healthier life. And then honestly, if you end up on my table, it makes my job easier. Why? Because you're
Right.
doing more things to help you,
Right.
right? Healthcare doesn't happen when you're in the
In an
office.
office.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all those things that you're doing outside, right? Just like you don't go to the gym and do a bunch of sit-ups and then go, where are my six-pack abs? Or I had that green smoothie, my cholesterol should be fine that one time.
Right.
That's a snapshot.
Somebody did say to me yesterday, I
Yeah.
had a salad this week. I was like, this week. Wait,
It is a constant
yeah.
commitment to things. It's not that, oh, you had that Coke or you had that Big Mac and now you're doomed, right? On the same token, right? But
Right.
what is the sum total of how we're living?
Right.
And you need to look at a big view of that. So, on one hand, don't beat yourself up if you slip up. But on the
Right.
other hand, what are you doing on the daily, weekly, monthly, yearly to
Yeah.
improve your long-standing health? And I think cupping could be a significant part of that. You learn the techniques, you're able to help yourself and your family and friends. And that's something that you now have ownership of, right? There's no additional cost once you learn how to use it and you get some supplies. And that to me makes a great medicine, right?
It's fantastic. And then couple that with, like you said, some of the other lifestyle. I have to highlight, and listeners know, you call it weird or woo-woo or whatever. They know I believe in all the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
I have been mostly working from home for the past 7 years. I'm usually in the clinic a day or two and home the rest. And about 2 months ago, I was all of a sudden in the clinic every day.
Yeah.
And this particular clinic, I can't wait to build the new one, because I have a list of requirements, but it's in an office building. It's on the second story. The windows don't open. It's got fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
And when I was creating my wellness lifestyle, I was very intentional about things like grounding, morning sunlight, getting outside in nature, to the point, which is the goal, right? That it's just became so a part of my lifestyle that I didn't even realize how much time I was outside during the workday just stepping out. We live on a farm. We've got horses and chickens and gardens and dogs, and I'm always in and out and in and out. And I almost never, including right now, wear shoes at home. The first 2 weeks that I was suddenly full-time at the clinic,
Yeah.
I could feel the inflammation. I was exhausted. I was achy. I know enough to know, after getting rid of all of my autoimmune symptoms many years ago, I know people ask me all the time, well, do you think you were misdiagnosed? Do you think, and I'm like, no, if I went back to how I was living, I would totally be diagnosable again. So I had to be really careful and reel it in. And yes, the next clinic will have windows that open and grass I can stand in and not fluorescent lights and all the things, But it was such a good reminder for me of really, really, really how impactful just incorporating nature and how humans have been created to live into our life. So I love that you brought up, we've lost touch with that. Like I haven't been able to successfully eat nightshades for years. And last summer, we made salsa out of the garden all the time.
Very different, right? It's very different when you're growing it. It's very different when your body's harmonized. Yeah.
Was it because it was seasonal? Was it because we grew it? I don't know, but I couldn't eat
probably a combination of everything, right?
I don't know. But it's there's so much that we have moved away from, and you're helping us move back toward and having these conversations of the things that people think like, really? Morning sunlight's going to help, and my eyes is going to help my sleep.
Absolutely. It is so crazy that we're questioning that. I remember, like in the 50s, right? Breast, formula came out, right? And they're like, oh, don't do that disgusting act. Use this thing in a can. And then like 9 out of 10 doctors prefer Camel Lights,
right, exactly.
It's
all
like,
around the same time, right?
What you guys do? And who did it affect? Not just the boomers, it's fucking us up. Oh,
it's
yes,
you can say whatever. I told you I'm from Jersey. You can say whatever you want.
I've been good so far. You should hear me. You should hear me in clinic.
We keep it real here.
I think that's it, right? We say my favorite expression from our classical text is acupuncture is an expression of humanity. So not only do I have to be who I am, I have to honor who you are, and there's that dance. There's this interaction, and that's going to be different if you see a different practitioner. That's going to be different with a different patient, but we have to honor that to be able to get somebody results.
Absolutely. And also not everybody is the right fit for everybody.
Oh, no, I'm not everybody's acupuncturist. I'm well aware of that.
I'm not everybody's health coach. That's for sure. So it is. No, I agree. If we're not showing up genuinely, we're not helping anybody.
Yeah. And that's why I have 3 associates, because they're all very different. And, like, you don't like me? Oh, you want somebody quieter? Oh, okay, over there.
Right. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Oh, amazing. Well, we're at the point in the conversation where I ask the really tough question that listeners know I'm going to ask, which can be anything. What is one thing people can do today to start to improve their health?
So this one comes with a caveat that you have to be consistent, and it doesn't have to be long. Every time I'm asked some variation of this question, my answer is always meditate. I can't think of a more long-term health practice that is free, accessible to everyone, and will help with just about every goddamn thing we talked about here.
Yeah.
Right. True. And it costs absolutely nothing. And if you're trying to stack it with other things, walk outside, put your feet on bare ground, do it early in the morning and catch the natural red light. Yeah, you can stack all those things together, but develop a consistent, doesn't have to be long. We just
Thank you for saying that.
Like 10 breaths. Yeah. Don't even set a timer if you can't sit down. But that will build. It will become part of your life. I've been trying to meditate since 1994. I just hit 2,020 days consecutively this morning.
Ooh, amazing.
And the
Amazing.
impact of having that consistency has given me some insight into it. And I can't point to when I felt the benefit or even quantify exactly how much I feel.
Right.
But I know my head is working better. I know my body's working better. And it was because of that. I'm sorry. I want to preach about that all day.
Sing it, like, really, because it was such it is, and you hit all of the points I always hit, because all of those resistances, right? I don't have an hour every morning to meditate. It's too hard. I can't clear my mind. I love that you said I've been trying. It's a practice. There's a practice. Reason it's called a practice. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to get to bliss for it to be working.
Well, you will never not have a thought.
No,
I'm going to say that.
You will maybe when you're dead.
You will have a thought all the time while you're meditating.
It's an exercise.
The idea is not to be attached to it.
Right.
And to let it go and be gentle with yourself. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. So many gifts. And when people ask about the beginning of my healing journey, you know, like, what was the thing? There's never the one thing. And I wasn't scientific. I wanted to try everything. So I didn't do things one at a time. But when I finally created a consistent meditation practice, was the first time in over a decade I woke up feeling rested. My pain was better. Chicken egg, you know, I don't know why, but I know it helps reduce inflammation and makes us better humans. It just does. So I love that.
I will tell you, I hope I'm not outing myself too much. I was talking with a licensed social worker, and she goes, "Oh my God, you have so much going on. What do you do to relax?" I go, "Oh, don't worry. I meditate every day." And I just kept going. She's like, "You don't slow down though." I'm like, "No, I only got so much time on this planet, and I want to be able to do things."
Yeah.
You know, so I'm going to do the things to take care of myself so I can get that stuff done.
Which and if all anybody hears is that statement right there, that we have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others, so that we can impact others. And I, for one, want to thank you for what you are doing and what you're putting out there, and the power you're giving people to really improve not just their physical health, but their lives.
Yeah.
So I thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I had, if you can't tell, I had a ton of fun on this show.
Me too. I told you, I knew right away.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. Maybe you'll come back and join us again, and we can
anytime.
Have
I'm more than happy to.
Because I know there's more to say. For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.